Secretary Haaland, thanks so much for taking the time.
Thanks for having me.
So you have probably the highest name recognition in this campaign, one of the most high-stakes campaigns in this election cycle. I imagine a lot of our viewers are familiar with you, but I would like to take a chance for you, give you a chance to introduce yourself, talking about kind of both your professional and your personal background and how it would inform your work as governor.
Sure. Thank you so much. So I was raised in a military family. My dad was a Marine, a career Marine. He fought in Vietnam. He was a combat Marine. My mom, they met when my mom was in the Navy, although her career was at the Bureau of Indian Affairs in the education department. They didn't have a BIE yet. She worked for the BIA for 25 years. I graduated from Highland High School. I graduated from UNM School of Law, and in 2014 I ran for lieutenant governor. In 2015 I ran for state chair of the Democratic Party of New Mexico, and during that time is when there was an announcement. Governor Lujan Grisham announced that she would be running for governor, and so it would leave the congressional seat vacant, and so I decided to run for that seat. We'd never had a Native American woman in Congress, and as it turned out in 2018, 2 of us were elected, so that was great. And then the end of my first term as Congresswoman, President Biden nominated me to serve in the Department of the Interior, and so I served there for 4 years, 70,000 person career staff with $18 billion annual budget. And so we worked very hard, moved our clean energy transition forward for our country, took 2 species off the endangered species list, 50 solar projects in the desert Southwest, millions of acres of land into protected public lands. And so I feel that my time there was very well spent, and we accomplished a tremendous amount. And I feel that executive experience absolutely helps me to know, how to run a state government. Additionally, when I was in Congress, I got 5 bills passed and signed into law. 2 of those bills I implemented as Secretary of the Interior. So I feel like things went full circle for me when I was there.
And so you've touted your time in Washington as giving you a leg up over your competitor, Sam Bregman, not only as an executive, but also in holding the Trump administration and President Trump himself accountable. The one time in the Dukes Up debate that Bregman pushed back on something you said is when he said he's, quote, not aware of any holding Mr. Trump's feet to the fire on your part. Can you give a specific example of how you've done that?
Yes. Well, I mean, when COVID started happening in our country, the Trump administration wanted to shortchange New Mexicans and tribal communities with healthcare dollars to fight the pandemic. Right at that point, no one knew how devastating it would be across our entire world, but we, the Democrats in the House, took it very seriously, and we fought the administration to allocate enough money for tribes, for communities across New Mexico. And so it's because of us and the bill that I co-sponsored that we were able to do that healthcare became a priority for our state and for our tribes here.
And then as Interior Secretary, you instated or proposed several protections for public lands in New Mexico, and in some cases sacred lands here across the state. As governor, how would you balance preserving New Mexico's natural resources with tapping them as an economic driver?
There are places to drill and mine, there are places not to drill and mine, right? Chaco isn't one of those places. And so we recognize, look, when I was Secretary of the Interior, we really consolidated the footprint of oil and gas, consolidated it, and yet we still were producing oil and gas. We're still moving those permits forward. So it's really ensuring that we are making our steps count, right? That we're not just opening up every inch of our state to the industry, but thinking deeply about where does this make sense and where does it not make sense, basically.
And New Mexico does have some of the strictest emission standards in the country, but under Lujan Grisham, the Environment Department has struggled to keep up with enforcement. How under your governorship would you support enforcement of these strict standards so they're not just in the books, but actually being followed?
Absolutely. Well, it's there. We might need to hire some more folks, make sure that these people are trained and that they understand the laws and the regulations. Just staffing up in the best way possible, I think, will really make a difference in how we're managing that.
With the oil and gas industry contributing so much to the state's revenue, how do you imagine there'll be some pushback on that if the money that's being spent on staffing up the Environment Department, for instance, is oil and gas revenue money?
Right. So first of all, I mean, I don't think anyone would argue that our children deserve clean air, clean land, clean water, right? Our children deserve all of those things, and so those would be my top priorities, right? Making sure our kids have what they need to thrive. I don't see any industry executive arguing with that fact. So I think they are working hard also to make their footprint smaller, to operate in a cleaner way. Technology has really blossomed for so many industries over the last, say, 5 to 10 years. And it's up to us to make sure that we're implementing those technologies in the furtherance of how industry operates in the state. We need sustainable industry here. The climate crisis is, ready to swallow us whole. We need to make sure that we are protecting our environment for future generations.
Speaking of industry in the state, let's talk about data centers. They're popping up across the state. These things need a lot of water. They need a lot of power. When Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham announced one such center, the Project Jupiter in southern New Mexico, she touted it as a $5 billion partnership that would provide 1,000 jobs and said, quote, New Mexico is investing in its economy to build a more prosperous tomorrow. You've said that you don't believe that data centers have our community's best interest at heart. How would you approach that industry differently than Lujan Grisham has?
So I would just say, and first of all, so grateful for all the things our governor has done for our state, right? We're having a fight over universal child care right now that would have saved my life when I was raising my kid as a single mom. But look, as I said, any industry that comes to New Mexico needs to be sustainable. We have a climate crisis on our hands. There's water shortages. We're an agricultural state on top of that. We need to make sure that our farmers can get the water that they need. And so how do we ensure that any industry, including data centers, are operating sustainably, right? Clean energy, the least amount of water possible. We just have to make sure we're conserving. And so it's putting guardrails on the industry, ensuring that everybody knows and understands what those guardrails are. But we have to prepare for the future. And right now, as I said, climate change is the real enemy of our water, our precious natural resources, which is water.
Well, and speaking of water, Lujan Grisham's advocated to clean and reuse produced water, that's oil and gas or fracking wastewater, to help grow not only digital industry like this, but manufacturing in the state. What, if anything, would need to happen for you to feel comfortable with the state reusing produced water?
Sure. Well, the science needs to be made whole on that, right? We need to know exactly what is in that water, and is it okay to use for a stated purpose? And so, but I think that it's up to the people who are the industry that's producing that produced water. It's up to them to prove to us that it's safe to use,
As
right?
governor, is there anything you could do to put some pressure on that effort?
I think we can ask the legislature to put some funding toward, the research and ensuring that we have the scientists to make sure that that water is safe, and that the industry is actually the ones who are proving to us that it is safe.
Moving on to another industry, the massive private equity firm Blackstone is trying to buy PNM. You haven't opposed that acquisition outright, but you have said that if it went through, you would keep a close eye on that agreement. As governor, what specific guardrails would you implement, and how would you enforce them?
So, whatever the promises are that this company has made to the communities in New Mexico, we just need to hold their feet to the fire, right?
So what does that look like? How do you do that as governor?
So have they promised lower rates? Then they need to follow through with that. Have they promised community investment, moving our clean energy transition forward? Because we promised ourselves here in New Mexico that we want zero emissions by 2050, right? And so all of those things, we just need to make sure that they're following through on those. In the meantime, I know that a lot of people are speaking out. They're speaking their mind. It's the PRC's, the Public Regulation Commission has the job of vetting that company and saying yes or no. And so I just think everyone should make their voices heard.
If you were on the fourth floor of the Roundhouse and found that Blackstone was falling short of what they had promised the community, what tools are available to you to follow through on pushing back against that and holding them to account?
Well, I mean, I don't want to say that I would, sue a company outright or immediately, but, let's have a conversation and find a way to get you back on track and ensure that you are living up to the obligations that you promised New Mexicans, right? Communities want to be able to rely on promises that are made to our state, and too often, private equity has fallen very short. We're the state with the most private equity firms operating here, and we've seen that they have been terrible for our healthcare system. And so this, this can't be another private equity situation that disappoints New Mexicans, that makes us less safe, that doesn't move forward with the things that we want to accomplish as New Mexicans.
Okay. Your competitor, Sam Bregman, is the Bernalillo County District Attorney, and he's positioned himself in some ways as kind of the law and order candidate or the tough on crime candidate in this race. How does your plan to combat crime differ from Mr. Bregman's, and why should voters who consider public safety their number one issue elect you instead?
Exactly. My plan differs in the fact that I want to get to the root causes of crime. I don't want a revolving door. I don't want people just in and out of jail. We need to help people change their lives. It's my belief that the root causes of crime start long before somebody commits their first crime, right? We have juveniles who are just on the wrong track, and think about the ways we can help families to have stronger family unit. Help New Mexicans to have a raise. Some parents have to work, 3 and 4 jobs just to make ends meet when they should be spending more time with their families. I think we can foster more of a family unit that would be beneficial to children. Our public school system, so many children don't read early enough. And if they can read early enough, that opens up an entire educational journey for them. I think we can change people's lives, but we need to start early, right? It's the terrible fentanyl problem that we're experiencing in New Mexico also. A lot of folks, they commit crimes because of substance use. We need to get those illegal drugs off of our streets, so law enforcement needs the tools to get violent criminals, to get illegal drugs off our streets, and we just need to get to the root causes of crime.
And you bring up child well-being being one of those. Attorney General Raul Torres recently dropped a damning report about the Children, Youth, and Families Department, outlining numerous systemic failures, including the deaths of 14 children in its care. Luan Grisham has repeatedly defended CYFD. How would you address the role of this long-troubled agency and how it's supposed to show up for the kids in its care?
Right. So heartbreaking, yes, a heartbreaking situation. And CYFD really needs to change from the ground up. There's a morale issue. There's a lot of state employees who have spent their careers there. They deserve to be respected, and so I have experience with that, right? I went into the Department of the Interior, and it had been decimated by Donald Trump, and so I know how to rebuild a department. And I'd like to go to the commission model to ensure consistency for the children. And so that's one thing that will change. We need to immediately work on increasing the number of foster parents across New Mexico so that children have a safe place to go until they can go back home or find a new home. We need to ensure that that this is a place where children are safe.
Okay. And a judge last year found the state remains out of compliance with the Yazzie Martinez educational equity ruling. That's from back in 2018, and the Public Education Department has remained out of compliance. The agency did create a plan to change that last fall, but the plaintiffs in the case don't like it. They've asked for a rewrite. If you're governor, how will New Mexico finally get into compliance with this now nearly decade-old ruling?
Absolutely. So as I often say, every child in New Mexico, every disabled child, every Native American, every Hispanic, every English as a second language child, every single child deserves a quality public education in our state. And so I know that the plaintiffs were not, they didn't agree with the plan. Then let's get back to the table and talk about a plan that we can make work for our state. And I think that can be done. I did that many times as Secretary of the Interior. You have the power of convening, so let's convene. Let's talk about how we can ensure that there is a plan that will work, that will ensure that every child has that quality public education.
Deb Haaland, thanks so much for being
Thank
here.
you.